In the rain, a little girl eats her packed lunch of rice and an egg, all by herself. She was made fun of by her classmates because her mom is a janitor, but someone saw her pain and decided to change everything from that moment on. If this story caught your attention, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching from. Here's the rest of the story. The rain fell without hurry over the city, soaking the streets and leaving the air heavy and cold. It was one of those grey June mornings when the sky seems to merge with the wet asphalt. Outside Washington Elementary School on the south side, a little girl was sitting alone on the muddy ground under a nearly bare tree. Her name was Isabella. She was 7, with drenched brown hair stuck to her thin face, a worn-out uniform with stains that soap could no longer remove, and plastic sandals too big for her feet. In her trembling hands she held a faded blue plastic lunch container. Inside it, white rice and a hard-boiled egg. She ate slowly, trying to shield her food from the rain, while silent tears streamed down her face, mixing with the cold water. She didn't cry out loud. She never cried out loud. She had learned that noisy tears draw attention, and attention was the last thing she wanted. A few minutes earlier, during recess, everything had been normal. Isabella had found a quiet corner in the covered courtyard, away from the noise. She sat on a worn wooden bench, opened her lunch container carefully, and smiled discreetly when she saw the food her mother had prepared the night before. She was hungry. She hadn't had breakfast because there was no bread at home. That's when 2 girls approached. Melissa and Julia, both 8 years old, in impeccably clean uniforms, brand-name sneakers, and colorful backpacks full of store-bought snacks. They glanced at each other, giggled under their breath, and came closer with that cruel glint in their eyes that only mean-spirited children can have. Melissa was the first to speak, making an exaggerated face as she pointed to the container. "Ugh, what is that smell?" Isabella froze. Her fingers tightened on the lid, but she couldn't close it in time. Julia leaned in, feigning nausea. "Seriously, Isabella, that's like homeless person food. Rice and an egg? My mom feeds our dog better than that." The other children around them started to look. Some snickered. Others just watched in silence, not brave enough to defend her. Isabella felt her face burn with shame. She tried to close the container, but Melissa grabbed her hand. "Hold on. Is it true your mom's a cleaning lady? My mom said she saw her cleaning the floors at Mr. Ryan Carter's house. That rich guy from Lincoln Park." "My mom said that too," Julia continued, excited by the cruelty. "Why are you even at this school, Isabella? You should be at a real school for poor kids. This place is for normal people." Isabella didn't answer. She couldn't. Her throat was too tight, her heart beating too fast. She snapped the lid shut, stumbled to her feet, and ran. She ran without looking back, across the courtyard, down the stairs, straight past the gate without anyone seeing her. The sound of their laughter echoed like a painful siren. She crossed the street, without paying attention. On the other side, she sat on the wet ground under that tree and opened the container again. Her hands were shaking so much she almost dropped the egg. She ate in silence, chewing slowly, swallowing with difficulty. Each bite seemed to carry the weight of shame, rejection, and loneliness. She didn't understand. She didn't understand why being the daughter of a hard-working woman was a reason for humiliation. Her mother, Sarah, 41, woke up every day at 5 in the morning, took 2 buses to get to the houses she cleaned, and came back at 7, in the evening exhausted, but always with a tired smile for her, always with food on the table, even if it was simple, always with a hug before bed. Why was that shameful? Across the street, stopped at a red light, a black luxury sedan was watching everything. Inside, a 45-year-old man gripped the steering wheel with unnecessary force, his eyes fixed on that drenched little girl eating alone in the rain. Ryan Carter, a millionaire from the financial market, owner of 3 investment firms, 2 houses, 4 imported cars, and a life built on numbers and cold decisions. He lived surrounded by luxury, but was immersed in a loneliness that all his money couldn't fill. His wife had left him 3 years earlier, tired of eating dinner alone. They didn't have children. She had wanted them. He always said he didn't have time. There he was, stuck at a traffic light, watching a scene that froze him. He knew that girl, even without ever having spoken to her. He knew her because her mother was one of his employees, Sarah, the housekeeper who cleaned his marble floors 3 times a week, always serious, always efficient, always invisible. He had never realized she had a daughter. The light turned green, but Ryan didn't move. The car behind him honked impatiently. He didn't hear it. He was watching the girl close her empty container, wipe her tears with the back of her muddy hand, and stand up slowly, her shoulders slumped, her head down. A completely broken child. Something strange happened inside Ryan's chest, a sharp, inexplicable pain, as if someone had stuck a knife between his ribs and twisted it slowly. When the light turned red again, he pulled over illegally, grabbed an umbrella from the back seat and got out into the rain. He crossed the street with quick steps, his designer suit getting wet, his Italian leather shoes sinking into puddles. Isabella was about to go back when she saw a grown man approaching with an umbrella. She vaguely recognized his face. She had seen that man on the rare occasions her mother had taken her to work. Ryan knelt beside her, holding the umbrella over them both, and asked in a voice softer than he intended, "Why are you out here all alone eating in the rain?" Isabella looked down at her own wet feet. She took a deep breath, feeling the lump in her throat tighten. When she managed to speak, her voice came out small and broken. "They called me a cleaning lady's daughter. They said my food was gross." Ryan felt each word like a punch. He swallowed hard, not knowing what to say. He just stayed there, kneeling on the wet sidewalk, holding an umbrella over a girl he barely knew, feeling for the first time in years something he couldn't name. Shame, guilt, compassion. "You need to go back inside. You're cold," he finally said. Isabella shook her head, her eyes fixed on the ground. "I don't want to go back. They'll just laugh at me again." Ryan took a deep breath. He looked at the school, at its iron gates, at the windows with cracked panes. He looked at the shivering girl. "I'll talk to the principal." "No!" Isabella took a step back, terrified. "Please don't say anything. It'll make it worse. They'll hate me more." Her voice was filled with a desperation Ryan had never heard before, a desperation that knew consequences, that had learned the price of asking for help. "Okay," he lied, "but please go back inside." Isabella nodded, wiping her nose on the back of her hand. She ran back to the school, disappearing into the hallways. Ryan stood there, under the rain that was now soaking his suit completely. He walked back to his car with slow steps. He got in, closed the door, but didn't start the engine. He just sat there, staring at the steering wheel, feeling something strange grow inside his chest, a restlessness he didn't recognize. He remembered his own childhood, his mother who sold lunches at the street market, the father he never knew, the hand-me-down clothes, the deep shame of existing in a world that made you feel like you didn't deserve to be there. He had spent his entire life trying to forget, building walls of money around that poor boy he once was. And there he was, 45 years later, a millionaire, powerful, successful, discovering that the walls were useless when you looked into the eyes of a child suffering in the same way. He picked up his phone with trembling hands and cancelled all his meetings for the day. His secretary was so surprised she forgot to reply. He drove home on autopilot, oblivious to the traffic. He parked in the garage, went up to his bedroom and stood in the middle of the enormous room, looking at the bed that never held anyone but him, at the expensive paintings, at the closet full of designer clothes. Everything felt empty. That night, Ryan couldn't sleep. He stayed awake until 4 in the morning, lying in the dark, replaying the scene of the girl in the rain over and over. He saw her face, her tear-filled eyes, the faded blue lunch container, the soaked uniform. He remembered when he was Isabella's age, when he was humiliated at school for wearing shoes with holes in them, when the other kids laughed because his mother sold food on the street, the pain of swallowing his tears, the bitter taste of shame that gets stuck in your throat. He remembered promising himself that one day he would have so much money that no one could ever humiliate him again. And he had succeeded. He had a lot of money, more than he could spend in a lifetime. But there he was, alone, with no one to hug, no one to share the weight of the day with. And a 7-year-old girl, with a blue lunch container and a worn-out uniform, had managed to do in minutes what years of therapy couldn't: crack the walls he had so carefully built around his heart. Ryan looked up at the dark ceiling of his bedroom, and for the first time in decades, he cried. He cried in silence, alone in his 3-story mansion, surrounded by everything money could buy, but feeling poorer than ever. Ryan woke up with his body aching, as if he'd been in a fight all night. He hadn't slept for more than 2 hours straight. He got up at 6, showered on autopilot, and put on a grey suit that cost more than Sarah's monthly salary. He looked in the mirror and saw a tired, red-eyed man he didn't recognize. During breakfast, prepared by the housekeeper who arrived at 5:30 every day, Ryan couldn't eat. The French toast with imported berry jam, the freshly ground Colombian coffee, the organic orange juice. It all tasted like nothing. All he could see in his mind was white rice and a hard-boiled egg in a faded blue container. He grabbed his car keys and left. He wasn't going to the office, he was going to Washington Elementary School. He arrived at 7:15 as the gates were opening and the children were starting to stream in. He stayed across the street, inside his car, watching. He saw Isabella arrive alone, by bus, a worn-out backpack on her shoulders, the same 2 big shoes on her feet. She went in through a side door, head down, avoiding the groups of kids chatting excitedly. Ryan waited another 15 minutes and then crossed the street. He walked into the school, past the front office without being questioned because he was dressed like someone important, and asked to speak with the principal. The woman at the desk looked at his expensive suit, at the luxury watch on his wrist, and immediately led him to the principal's office. The principal, Mary Sullivan, was 52, with graying hair in a bun and the tired eyes of someone fighting a daily war against a lack of resources. When Ryan walked in, she stood up and extended her hand, surprised. "Mr. Carter, I wasn't expecting you. How can I help you?" She knew his name. Everyone in the area did. He was one of the wealthiest men in the neighborhood. Ryan sat in the worn plastic chair which creaked under his weight. "I want to make a donation to the school, to improve the school lunches, renovate whatever is needed, buy school supplies for students who can't afford them." Mary blinked, confused. It wasn't every day that millionaires showed up offering unsolicited help. "That would be wonderful, Mr. Carter. Our school has so many needs. The children get one basic, insufficient meal. Many come to school without having had breakfast. We have leaks in the classrooms, broken windows, a shortage of supplies." "Then I'll provide for all of it," Ryan said, his voice firmer than he felt. "But there's one condition." Mary frowned, suspicious. "Which is?" "I want you to investigate cases of bullying in the school, especially against children from poorer families. I want you to take real measures, not just have empty talks. I want the children who do the humiliating to be properly punished, and for the victims to receive psychological support." Mary sighed deeply, leaning back in her chair. "Mr. Carter, I understand your concern. But bullying is a complex problem. Often the families of the aggressive children are influential themselves. The parents complain, threaten to sue the school. It's difficult to act without support." "You have support now," Ryan leaned forward. "Financial and legal. I will hire lawyers to defend the school from any lawsuit related to fair disciplinary measures. I will fund a psychological support program for victims and aggressors, but I want action." Mary looked at the man for a long moment. There was something different about him. It wasn't the typical arrogance of someone with money who wants to be in control. It was something else. It looked like pain. "May I ask what prompted this?" Ryan hesitated. He didn't want to expose Isabella. He didn't want to make things worse for her. "I saw a situation yesterday that deeply disturbed me. A child eating alone in the rain because she was humiliated. That can't be allowed to happen." Mary nodded slowly. "I'll do what I can, Mr. Carter, but I need time to implement changes. I can't just expel students without due process." "I understand. I just ask that you start." They talked for another half hour. Ryan took notes, asked for estimates, and promised to return with documents. When he left the school, he felt slightly better. At least he was doing something. It wasn't enough, but it was a start. In the following days, Ryan returned to the school several times. He brought nutritionists to evaluate the lunches, engineers to inspect the necessary renovations, and psychologists to structure the support program. The teachers started talking about the millionaire who had appeared out of nowhere wanting to help. Sarah knew nothing. She continued cleaning Ryan's house 3 times a week, always punctual, always serious, always invisible. He didn't know how to approach the subject, how to tell her he had seen her daughter suffering, how to explain his involvement without seeming intrusive. It was on the Thursday of the 2nd week that Ryan found the courage. Sarah was cleaning the living room, dusting the fine wood furniture, when he walked in. She was startled. He was normally not home when she worked. "Mr. Carter, I'm sorry. I didn't know you were here. I can come back later." "No, please, actually, I need to talk to you." Sarah turned pale. She gripped the cleaning cloth tighter. "Did I do something wrong?" "No, not at all." Ryan gestured for her to sit, but Sarah shook her head, refusing. "Employees don't sit in the presence of their employer. I saw your daughter, Isabella." Sarah's face changed completely. The mask of professionalism fell away, replaced by a frightened mother. "Where? When? Is she okay?" "She's okay, physically." Ryan took a deep breath. "But I saw a situation at her school that worried me. She was being humiliated by other children." Sarah closed her eyes. Tears began to stream silently down her face. She made no sound. She just cried, standing in the middle of the luxurious living room, holding a cleaning cloth in her hands. "I knew it," she finally said, her voice broken. She would come. Home sad, quiet. She'd asked me if being a cleaning lady was a bad thing. I told her no, that honest work is never bad. But she didn't believe me. "Did you talk to the school?" Sarah let out a bitter laugh. "And say what? I'm just a cleaning lady. No one's going to listen to me. The other mothers have money, influence. I have nothing but my job." Ryan felt anger rising inside him. Not at Sarah, but at the situation, at the injustice, at the silent cruelty that permeated everything. "You have more than you think. You have a beautiful, smart, strong daughter. And now you have my support. I've already started taking measures at the school. I'm going to make sure Isabella is protected." Sarah looked at him with suspicion. "Why? Why would a man like you care about a child like my daughter?" Ryan could have given several answers. He could have said it was social responsibility, that it was the right thing to do. But he chose the truth. "Because I was that child once, and nobody helped me." Sarah swallowed hard. She looked at this rich, powerful man with his designer suit and expensive watch, and saw something she didn't expect to see. She saw someone who understood. "Thank you, Mr. Carter. You don't have to thank me. And please, call me Ryan." Sarah nodded, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. She went back to cleaning the furniture, but Ryan noticed her movements were lighter, less tense. That night Ryan had dinner alone as always, but for the first time in years, he didn't feel completely empty. He felt like he was doing something that mattered, something that went beyond numbers in a bank account. The next day he received a call from Principal Sullivan. "Mr. Carter, I need to speak with you urgently." Ryan felt his stomach clench. "What happened?" "The mothers of Melissa and Julia, the girls who humiliated Isabella, found out about the changes I'm implementing. They came here making threats. They said they're going to sue the school, that they'll pull their daughters out, that they'll destroy my career. They're saying you're interfering improperly, that you have no right to decide what happens at the school." Ryan closed his eyes. He knew this would happen. People with money and influence don't like to be crossed. "Leave it to me. I'll handle this." "How?" "The way I know how, with resources they won't expect." But when he hung up the phone, Ryan felt the weight of responsibility. He had gotten himself into something bigger than he had imagined. And now, if he failed, it wasn't just him who would suffer. It was Isabella. It was Sarah. It was all the invisible children who depended on someone to fight for them. Ryan looked out his office window at the city below and wondered if he had the strength to face what was coming. The meeting was set for Tuesday at 3 p.m. in the principal's office. Ryan arrived 20 minutes early, accompanied by his lawyer, Henry Taylor, a 60-year-old man with an impeccable reputation. Mary Sullivan was nervous, shuffling papers on her desk over and over. The mothers of Melissa and Julia arrived right on time, with their designer clothes, expensive handbags, and expressions of superiority. Claudia, Melissa's mother, owned an expensive boutique downtown. Patricia, Julia's mother, was married to an influential lawyer. When they saw Ryan, they paused for a moment. Claudia was the first to speak, her voice sweet but venomous. "Mr. Carter." "What? A surprise. I didn't know you were interested in school matters." "I'm interested in justice," Ryan replied calmly, "and in ensuring that all children are treated with dignity." Patricia crossed her arms, looking at him with disdain. "Dignity? The principal is accusing our daughters of bullying without any proof. That's slander. My husband is already preparing a lawsuit against the school." Henry leaned forward, placing a folder on the table. "We have proof. Testimonies from 5 witnesses, including teachers and students, confirming your daughter's aggressive behavior towards Isabella Sanchez. We have records of at least 8 incidents in the last 3 months. Claudia laughed, but it was a humorless laugh. "Isabella Sanchez, the cleaning lady's daughter. Please. Kids fight, Mr. Carter. It's normal. You don't need to turn this into a police matter just because the girl is overly sensitive." Ryan felt anger rise in his throat like bile. Kids don't fight when one of them is systematically humiliated for her social status. That's not a fight. It's cruelty, and I won't allow it to continue. Patricia stood up, slamming her hand on the table. "You have no authority to decide anything in this school. Who are you to come in here and dictate the rules? I'm someone who is funding this school's renovations. I'm someone who is paying lawyers to protect it from baseless lawsuits. And I'm someone who will not back down." The silence that followed was heavy. Mary finally found the courage to speak. "Melissa and Julia are suspended for 5 days. When they return, they will be monitored by a psychologist. If there is a recurrence, the suspension will be permanent." "You can't do that," Claudia screamed. "I'll pull my daughter out of this filthy school. I'll tell all the other mothers. I'll destroy this institution's reputation." Henry opened the folder and took out several documents. "You are free to do so, but be aware that any slander will be met with legal action, and Mr. Carter has infinitely superior resources for a prolonged legal battle." Patricia was red with rage, but she knew when she was losing. "This isn't over," she said, grabbing her purse. "You'll regret this." The 2 women stormed out, slamming the door. Mary let out a long sigh. "I've never done that before. I've never stood up to parents like that." "You did the right thing," Ryan said, but the feeling of victory was short-lived. In the following days, Claudia and Patricia spread the word around town that the school was being controlled by an eccentric millionaire who was persecuting innocent children to defend a cleaning lady's daughter. They twisted the facts, created lies, and poisoned other mothers' minds. 5 families pulled their children from the school. Others began to question Mary openly. The Board of Education called the principal in for a meeting, demanding an explanation. Ryan received calls from journalists wanting to interview the millionaire who was causing the controversy. He refused them all. He didn't want Isabella to become a news story. It was Sarah who suffered the worst blow. One morning when she arrived to work at a client's house, the woman was waiting for her at the door with a cold expression. "Sarah, I'm sorry, but I won't be needing your services anymore." Sarah felt the ground disappear from under her feet. "Why? Did I do something wrong?" "It's nothing personal. It's just, I heard your daughter is involved in that mess at the school. I don't want any trouble." "My daughter didn't cause any trouble. She was the victim." "That's not what I'm hearing, sorry. Sarah?" The door closed in Sarah's face. She stood there on the sidewalk, holding her bag of cleaning supplies, feeling tears burn her eyes. In the following weeks, she lost 3 more clients, all with similar excuses, all influenced by the gossip. Sarah tried to hide it from Isabella, but the girl noticed. She noticed when her mother started poring over bills at the kitchen table every night. She noticed when Sarah started eating less, so there would be more food for her. She noticed the burden her existence was causing. One night, Isabella woke up to the sound of crying from the kitchen. She got out of bed slowly and saw her mother sitting at the table, head in her hands, crying silently. "Mom?" Sarah quickly wiped her face, trying to smile. "It's nothing, sweetie. Go back to bed." "It's because of me, isn't it? The bad things that are happening are because of me." Sarah stood up quickly and hugged her daughter tightly. "No. Don't you ever think that. None of this is your fault. But the ladies don't want you to work for them anymore because of what happened at school. I heard you on the phone. Sarah couldn't lie. She just held her daughter tighter. We're going to be okay, Izzy, we always are. But that night, Isabella was certain that her existence was a burden. Guilt grew inside her like a poisonous weed. The next morning, Ryan received a call from Sarah. She had never called him before. "Mr. Carter, I need to talk to you." Her voice was broken, desperate. "What happened?" "I'm losing my jobs. The women are firing me because of what's happening. I don't know what to do. I can't pay the bills." Ryan closed his eyes. He knew this could happen. "How much do you need?" "I'm not asking for money," Sarah said quickly, proudly. "I just wanted to know if you know anyone who needs a housekeeper, or if you know of any jobs, anything." Ryan took a deep breath. An idea began to form in his mind. "I have a proposal, but I need you to come to my house tonight. Bring Isabella with you." Sarah hesitated. "Isabella?" "Yes, I need to speak with both of you." "Okay." When they hung up, Ryan stared at the phone. He was about to take a step from which there was no turning back. At 7 that evening, when the doorbell rang, Ryan felt his heart race. He opened the door to find Sarah with Isabella by her side. The girl was wearing a simple but clean dress, her hair combed, her eyes wide as she looked at the mansion. Sarah was tense. "Please, come in." They entered slowly. Isabella had never been there before. She looked at the crystal chandelier, the marble staircase, the paintings on the walls. Ryan led them to the living room and asked them to sit. Isabella chose the farthest sofa, shrinking into it. "Thank you for having us, Mr. Carter," Sarah said. "Ryan, please." He sat across from them. "I know you're going through a hard time because of me, so I want to offer a solution." Sarah leaned forward, hopeful. "I want to create a social project, an initiative that provides nutritious meals for vulnerable children, offers psychological support and tutoring. But I want to hire mothers like you, Sarah, women who no one sees, but who are the backbone of so many families." Sarah blinked, confused. "I don't understand. You want to hire me?" "I want you to coordinate the project, to help build the structure, hire other women, make it really work. I'll pay a decent salary on the payroll with benefits, and Isabella will have access to everything the project offers." The silence that followed was long. "Why me? I'm just a cleaning lady." "You're so much more than that. You're a woman who has fought to raise a daughter on her own. You're someone who understands the struggles because you live them. You're exactly who I need." Sarah looked at Isabella, who was silent. "Is this charity?" "No, it's responsibility, and an opportunity for both of us." Isabella finally spoke, her voice small. "Are you doing this because you feel sorry for me?" Ryan looked at the little girl and saw a deep wound. "No, I'm doing this because you reminded me that there's something more important than money. There's dignity, and every child deserves to have that." Isabella looked down, but a tear rolled down her cheek. Sarah took a deep breath and extended her hand. "I accept, but on one condition. I want to be able to hire other mothers like me, women who were fired unfairly, who are fighting on their own." Ryan smiled and shook her hand. "Done." That night, when Sarah and Isabella left, something had changed. It wasn't hope. It was just the possibility that maybe things could get better. But accepting that proposal would bring consequences that none of them were prepared to face. The Roots project was born 3 months later, in a renovated warehouse on the east side. Ryan had bought the abandoned space and transformed it into a welcoming place, with walls painted in light colors, large wooden tables, a fully equipped industrial kitchen, and a room for counseling. Sarah was the first official employee on the payroll with a salary of $3,000 a month, triple what she had earned cleaning houses. She could hardly believe it when she saw the amount in her bank account the first month. She cried alone in the bathroom, holding her phone, looking at the numbers that seemed impossible. In the first few days, she hired 5 women. All were mothers who had lost jobs, who were living in difficult situations. Amanda had 2 children and had been fired from a store after her youngest son got sick. Carla was a widow supporting 3 teenagers on her own. Rita had escaped a violent relationship with her 4-year-old daughter. Jessica was a single mother of 6-year-old twins, and Monica had raised 5 children working as a housekeeper her whole life. Together they began to prepare meals, real nutritious food, made with care. Rice, beans, meat, salad, vegetables, dignified food for children who deserved dignity. The project started by serving 20 children from Washington Elementary and 2 other nearby schools. The kids would come after school, receive a full meal, participate in tutoring sessions, and could talk with the psychologist Ryan had hired, Dr. Paula Miller, a 40-year-old woman who specialized in childhood trauma. Isabella was one of the first beneficiaries. She ate in silence, always in a corner, always watching. Dr. Miller tried to talk to her, but the girl answered in monosyllables. The guilt was still there, deeply rooted. Things seemed to be getting better. The project got a small feature in the local newspaper. Some people started making spontaneous donations. Everything seemed to be on the right track, until the first bomb exploded. 2 months after opening, Ryan received a court summons. Claudia and Patricia, along with 5 other mothers, were suing the Roots Project and Washington Elementary School for emotional distress. They claimed their daughters had been traumatized by the unfair suspension, that they were victims of persecution, that they had suffered institutional bullying. They were each demanding $200,000 in damages. Henry Taylor read the documents with a serious expression. This is an intimidation tactic. It won't hold up in court, but it will cost time and money, and it will create negative press for the project. I don't care about the money, Ryan said. I care about the children. If this turns into a media circus, the kids will suffer. They know that. That's exactly why they're doing it. News of the lawsuit leaked quickly. Journalists started calling. Claudia and Patricia gave interviews whining about how their poor, innocent daughters had been persecuted by a vengeful millionaire. The Roots Project started receiving anonymous, threatening phone calls. Shut that crap down. Nobody wants poor people getting handouts. You're ruining these kids. Sarah would arrive at the project every day to find graffiti on the gate. Den of freeloaders. Victim factory. She would clean it off before the children arrived, but the weight of those words stuck to her skin. The other employees started to get scared. Amanda received a call threatening her children. Carla was confronted on the street by a woman who screamed that she was raising professional beggars. Rita considered quitting when her ex-partner found out where she worked and showed up drunk at the gate, yelling that he was going to take their daughter away. Ryan hired security. He installed cameras. But he couldn't protect the women from the invisible violence, from the words that hurt. It was Isabella who suffered the deepest impact. At school, even with Melissa and Julia suspended, other children began to imitate their behavior. Not openly, because now there were consequences, but in subtle, cruel ways. They would bump into Isabella in the hallways, laugh when she walked by, write things in the bathroom. Isabella is the millionaire's pet. Spoiled cleaning lady's daughter. The girl started having nightmares. She would wake up screaming, drenched in a cold sweat. Sarah would find her huddled in bed, trembling, whispering, "I'm sorry, Mum, I'm sorry." Dr. Miller called Sarah and Ryan in for a private meeting. Isabella is developing signs of childhood depression. She blames herself for everything that's happening. She thinks she's a burden, that it would be better if she didn't exist. This is extremely dangerous. Sarah started crying right there, unable to hold it back. What do I do? How do I help my daughter? We need to intensify her sessions, and we need her to understand that none of this is her fault. But it will take time. Trauma doesn't heal overnight. Ryan left that meeting feeling powerless. He had money to buy mansions, cars, companies, but he couldn't buy peace for a 7-year-old girl. That night, he went home and sat in the dark. He thought about giving up. He thought about closing the project, paying the damages, letting things go, back to the way they were. But then he remembered Isabella's face eating in the rain. He remembered the 5 women who now had decent jobs. He remembered the 20 children who arrived at the project every day with shy smiles. He couldn't give up on them. The next day, Ryan woke up resolute. If they wanted a war, they would get one, but on his terms, with his weapons. He called Henry Taylor. "I want to counter-sue all of them. I want to sue for defamation, for harassment of the employees, for intimidation. I want to use every legal resource available. This will escalate the situation, Ryan. Are you sure?" "I'm sure. Since they're going to paint me as the villain, I might as well be an effective one." The countersuit was filed the following week. Ryan sued Claudia, Patricia, and the other 5 mothers for defamation and emotional distress. He asked for $1 million from each of them. The news exploded. The local papers ran sensationalist headlines. Millionaire sues mothers defending their daughters. Legal war between rich man and ordinary citizens. The sued mothers were terrified. $1 million was more than any of them had. Claudia closed her boutique. Patricia had to sell her car. The other 5 began to regret getting involved, but the situation got even worse when, 3 days later, Isabella disappeared. Sarah got home from work and couldn't find her daughter. She called the school, which said Isabella had left normally at 5 in the afternoon. She called the few friends the girl had. No one knew anything. At 8 o'clock, in a total panic, Sarah called Ryan. "Isabella's missing. I can't find her. I've looked everywhere." Ryan felt his blood run cold. "Have you talked to anyone? Have you checked the places she likes to go?" "She doesn't have places. She just stays at home or at school." "Ryan, what if someone did something to her? What if the threats weren't just words?" Ryan was out the door before he even hung up. "I'm on my way. Stay calm, Sarah. We're going to find her." But as he drove through the city in the dark night, Ryan felt a terror he had never felt before, a terror that squeezed his chest and stole his breath. What if something had happened to Isabella because of him? What if his whole attempt to help had, in the end, destroyed the only thing that really mattered? He got to Sarah's house in 20 minutes. She was at the door, pacing back and forth, her face wet with tears. She left her phone at home. She didn't take anything. Her backpack is here. Ryan looked around, trying to think. Where would a 7-year-old girl go alone at night without taking anything? "Let's search the neighborhood, the parks, the places she passes on her way from school." They went out together, searching streets, alleys, parks. They asked people on the street, shop owners. No one had seen a little girl by herself. At 10 o'clock, Ryan's phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Hello?" "Mr. Carter, this is the night watchman from Washington Elementary. I found a little girl sleeping under the tree outside. I think it's Isabella." Ryan felt his legs almost give out with relief. "We're on our way right now." When they arrived, they found the watchman holding Isabella, wrapped in a blanket. The girl was awake, but she wasn't crying. She was just staring into space, her eyes empty. Sarah ran and hugged her daughter tightly, sobbing. "Why did you do this? Why did you disappear like that?" Isabella didn't answer. Ryan knelt in front of her. "Isabella, what happened? Why did you come here?" The girl finally looked at him, and what Ryan saw in her eyes broke him in two. He saw surrender. He saw a child who had decided she wasn't worth the effort of existing. "I just wanted to sleep where it all started, where everything went bad. I thought if I stayed here, maybe everything would stop hurting." Sarah held her daughter tighter, crying uncontrollably. Ryan felt his own tears burn. At that moment, under the dim streetlights, next to a bare tree where it had all begun, Ryan understood something fundamental. It wasn't enough to want to help. It wasn't enough to have money and good intentions. Some wounds were too deep, and healing them required much more than he had ever imagined. In the days following Isabella's disappearance, everything changed. Ryan realized he had been fighting the wrong battle. It wasn't against Claudia and Patricia. The real battle was against the invisible pain that was eating Isabella up from the inside. He started visiting the girl every afternoon. He didn't bring expensive gifts. He brought simple chocolates, children's books, sometimes just his presence. He would sit on the floor of the small living room and talk to Isabella about trivial things, about clouds, about birds, about the taste of rain. At first, Isabella barely responded. She would stay curled up on the sofa, hugging a worn-out teddy bear. But slowly, word by word, she began to open up. "Why are you helping me?" she asked one day, her voice so quiet Ryan almost didn't hear it. "Because when I was your age, nobody helped me, and I know how much it hurts." "You were poor too?" "I was. My mother sold lunches at the street market. I wore clothes we were given. The boys at school laughed at me." Isabella looked at him with surprise, as if it were impossible to imagine this rich man having ever been like her. "And how did you stop feeling ashamed?" The question hit Ryan in the chest. "I never completely stopped. The shame is still here somewhere, but I learned that it doesn't define who I am. I learned that my mother's work was dignified even if people laughed. I learned that I deserved to exist even if I was poor." "I don't deserve to," Isabella said and started to cry. "My mum lost jobs because of me. You're spending money because of me. Everything is bad because of me." Ryan moved closer and, for the first time, hugged the little girl. She was so small, so fragile. "None of this is your fault, Isabella. None of it. Bad people do bad things. It's not the fault of the person who gets hurt. It's the fault of the person who does the hurting." Isabella cried, clinging to him for several long minutes. Sarah watched from the kitchen doorway, tears streaming silently down her face. Meanwhile, the legal battle continued. Henry Taylor managed to prove that Claudia and Patricia's accusations were baseless. The judge not only denied their claim for damages, but also fined them for bad faith litigation. The 7 mothers each had to pay $20,000 to the Roots Project. The victory should have been sweet, but Ryan felt no pleasure, only exhaustion. It was Sarah who came up with the idea that would change everything. One afternoon after Ryan finished talking with Isabella, Sarah called him into the kitchen. "Can I ask you for something?" "Of course. I want to expand the project. I want it to serve not just the children, but the mothers too. I want to create a space where women like me can learn new skills, take courses, get legal and psychological support. I want it to be a complete resource." Ryan looked at this woman who, just a few months ago, had been his invisible housekeeper. Now she was proposing to expand a social project with clear ideas. "You've changed," he said with admiration. "We change when we have to, when we have a reason to change." "How much do you need?" Sarah pulled a crumpled piece of paper from her pocket. She had done the math by hand. $150,000. To rent a bigger space, hire more professionals, buy equipment. Ryan didn't even blink. "You've got $200,000. The extra is for contingencies." Sarah stared at him, her eyes wide. "Ryan, No. You're not going to thank me. This isn't a favor. It's an investment. In you. In the women you're going to help. In the children who will grow up seeing their mothers live with dignity." The Roots Project 2.0, as Isabella nicknamed it, was born 4 months later. A 3-story building downtown, renovated and equipped. On the first floor, the industrial kitchen and dining hall. On the second, classrooms for courses, sewing, computer skills, elder care, cosmetology, cooking. On the third, offices for psychological, legal and social work services. Sarah hired 15 more women, all with similar stories. The project began serving 80 children and 40 women. The stories started to change. Amanda took the computer course and got an office job. Carla became a certified elder caregiver and started earning double. Rita took the sewing course and opened a small business. From her home, Jessica became a nail technician and built up a clientele. Monica became a cooking instructor within the project, and the children grew up watching this, watching their mothers transform, seeing that it was possible to change, to grow, to achieve. Isabella changed too, but more slowly, more painfully. Her sessions with Dr. Miller continued 3 times a week. Little by little, the girl began to talk about the guilt, the fear, the shame. She began to understand that she wasn't responsible for the bad things, but the real transformation came in an unexpected way. One day, a new girl arrived at the project. Camila, 6 years old, the daughter of one of the newly hired women. The girl was too thin, with frightened eyes. and she would flinch whenever someone spoke loudly. Isabella saw her sitting alone in the dining hall, staring at her food without eating. She recognized that look. It was the same one she had seen in the mirror a few months ago. Without anyone asking, Isabella went over and sat next to Camilla. "Hi, I'm Isabella." Camilla looked at her suspiciously. "You don't have to be scared. This is a safe place." "My mom said that, but I've heard that before." Isabella nodded, understanding. "I know, I've heard a lot of lies too, but this place is different. Here, people really care." Camilla looked down at her lunch. "I don't want to eat. The girls at my old school said my food was gross." Isabella felt something strange in her chest. It wasn't pain, it was anger. A clean, righteous anger. "Your food isn't gross. Those girls are the ones who are gross. And you know why? Because good people don't hurt other people for being poor." Camilla blinked, surprised by the firmness in Isabella's voice. "But what if they're right? What if I am gross?" "You're not. No kid is gross. No food made with love is gross. What's gross is cruelty." Camilla looked at Isabella for a long moment, and then, slowly, she started to eat. Isabella ate with her in silence, just keeping her company. When Sarah saw the scene from a distance, she had to leave the room to cry. Ryan, who had also seen it, felt something break inside his chest and rearrange itself in a new way. Isabella was healing, not because someone had healed her, but because she was healing someone else. That night Ryan had dinner alone as always, but for the first time in years he didn't feel lonely. He felt like part of something bigger, part of a network of people who had chosen to care. He picked up the phone and called Sarah. "Hi, I just wanted to say you're all doing an incredible job." Ryan, you're part of this too. I just pay the bills. You do so much more than that. You care, and that changes everything." When they hung up, Ryan looked out the window at the city. The blinking lights, the streets full of people, each person with their own story, their own pain, their own struggle. And for the first time since he saw Isabella eating in the rain, Ryan felt that maybe, just maybe, there was still hope. But the feeling of peace was short-lived. The news came by phone at 7 in the morning on a Friday. It was Principal Sullivan. "Ryan, the Board of Education is investigating the project. They've received anonymous complaints saying we're misusing public funds, that the children are being used for propaganda." Ryan sat up in bed trying to process it. "But the project doesn't use public funds. It's entirely private. I know, but the school is public, and many of the children served as students here. They're alleging a conflict of interest." "That's ridiculous." "I know, but they're sending an audit team. They're going to review everything." Ryan took a deep breath. "Leave it to me. I'll prepare all the documentation." "Ryan, there's one more thing. I got an anonymous call last night. A woman said that if I don't shut down the project, they're going to do something to the children." Ryan's blood ran cold. "They threatened the children?" "Not directly, but the tone was clear. We're not going to be intimidated. We're going to protect ourselves. I'll double the security. No one is going to lay a finger on those kids." When he hung up, Ryan sat on the edge of the bed, staring at his own hands. They were shaking. He had entered this battle thinking it was just about helping one little girl, but now he was in something much bigger, something that messed with power, with pride, with the very structure that keeps certain people on top and others at the bottom, and the people at the top didn't like it when someone tried to change the rules. The audit team arrived on Tuesday. 3 employees from the Board of Education spent 2 days reviewing every document from the Roots project. Ryan provided everything: receipts, invoices, contracts. Everything was perfectly documented. The auditors found nothing irregular, but the war didn't end there. A week later, articles started appearing on blogs. Millionaire uses poor children to clean up his image. The project's employees received messages, insults, accusations. Some of the children's mothers questioned whether it was safe to continue. It was Monica who had the idea. "Let's have an open house, show everyone what really happens here." Ryan liked it. Open house, Saturday. The event was scheduled. On Thursday, Isabella came to Ryan. I want to speak at the event. I want to tell my story. Are you sure? Yes. Maybe other kids will know they're not alone. On Saturday, the building was decorated. The women prepared a huge batch of chili. At 10 o'clock, people started arriving. By 11, there were over 100 people. At 2 in the afternoon, Isabella went up to the small stage. About 80 people were gathered. Sarah was in the front row. Ryan was beside her. My name is Isabella Sanchez. I'm 7 years old, and 6 months ago I thought it would be better if I didn't exist. Absolute silence. One day, I was eating my lunch. It was rice and an egg. My mum made it with love. But 2 girls laughed at me. They said my food was gross, that I was a cleaning lady's daughter. I ran away. I went to eat under a tree in the rain, and while I was eating, I thought that maybe they were right. That maybe I didn't deserve to be alive. Sarah cried. Ryan held her hand. But a man showed up. He saw me eating in the rain and asked why. I told him, and he understood, because he had been through it too. Isabella looked at Ryan. That man is Mr. Ryan Carter. He created this project because he remembers how much it hurts to be humiliated, how much it hurts to be ashamed of existing. People in the crowd were crying. Today I'm still scared sometimes. I still get sad. But now I know I'm not alone. There are other kids here. There are kids here. Our mums who fight. And there are people who really, truly care. So if you came here thinking this project is a lie, I wanted to ask you, look at me. Look at my mum. Look at everyone here. We're real. Our pain is real. And the help is real too. She finished firmly. And if you think kids like me don't deserve help, then the problem isn't with this project. It's with you. When she finished, there was silence. Then someone started clapping. Then another. The entire hall was on its feet, applauding. Isabella ran into her mother's arms. Sarah hugged her, crying and laughing. Ryan joined them. Something changed. The narrative changed. It was no longer about a millionaire. It was about real people, real pain, real healing. But not every battle ends with applause. From the back of the room, Claudia, Melissa's mother, watched with a bitter expression. She had come to see. And what she saw made her furious. If this project grew, her daughter would forever be remembered as the cruel girl. She couldn't allow that. She left, determined. If she couldn't destroy it through the law, she would try other means. 2 days later, articles came out, but they weren't the ones Claudia expected. The newspapers published emotional reports. 7-year-old girl's moving speech. A video went viral. The Roots Project received over $50,000 in donations. Claudia watched in a rage. That's when she got the idea. She called Patricia and the others. I have a plan. They met on Wednesday. 7 bitter women. We'll create fake profiles, spread stories about the project, things that plant doubt. That could get us in trouble. Only if they can prove it was us. In the following weeks, a venomous campaign began. Fake profiles shared exposés. I worked there and saw horrible things. The children are being forced. None of it was true. But a lie told 1,000 times begins to sound like the truth. Ryan saw it and felt his stomach turn. He called specialists, lawyers, but the profiles were well made. We can report them, but new ones will just pop up. Then we'll fight constantly. The campaign was working. Some families pulled their children out. Donations were cancelled. Trust was being eroded. Sarah would come home exhausted. I don't know if I can take much more of this. It's so tiring. I know, but if we give up, they win. It was Isabella who brought clarity. One night she went into Sarah's room. Mom, are we going to give up? I don't know, sweetie. It's really hard. Isabella was silent for a moment. If we give up, Camilla will be all alone, and all the other kids. They'll think nobody cares, like I used to think. But it's hurting you. I know, but it hurts more to give up on people than to fight for them. Sarah understood that her daughter had learned something profound, that real love hurts, that caring costs you something, but that giving up costs more. The next morning she called Ryan. We're not giving up. We're going to keep going. Ryan felt the weight lift slightly. "Thank you for being strong when I was feeling weak. We take turns. That's how we survive." They carried on, facing fake profiles, baseless accusations and attacks, tired, hurt, but resisting. Because giving up would mean abandoning children who had already been abandoned too many times. But the battle was far from over. 3 weeks later, Ryan received a notice that made his blood run cold. Claudia and the other mothers had filed a motion to have the Roots project shut down for alleged psychological abuse. They claimed the project created emotional dependency, indoctrinated children, and was manipulative. And worse, they had gotten an injunction. The project would have to close its doors until the hearing. Ryan read it 3 times, unable to believe it. He called Sarah, his hands shaking. "They did it. They're shutting down the project." On the other end of the line, Sarah began to cry. "What do we do?" Ryan looked out the window and had no answer. For the first time since it all began, he felt like maybe he had lost. The news spread. The next day the papers ran the story. Court orders temporary closure of controversial social project. The employees arrived, not knowing. Sarah gathered them all and explained. Some cried. "What's going to happen to us?" Amanda asked, trembling. "I'll keep paying your salaries," Ryan said, "until we sort this out. No one will be left without support." "And the children?" Monica asked. "What do we do about them?" 80 children who depended on that space. 80 children who had found safety. What would happen now? Isabella was sitting in a corner, hugging her knees. Camilla was beside her, holding her hand. "Is it going to be okay?" Camilla asked. Isabella didn't answer, because she didn't know, because she felt the darkness threatening to return. Ryan walked over and knelt down. "Girls, listen to me. This is temporary. We're going to fight. We're going to prove they're wrong. And we're going to come back." "Promise?" Camilla asked. Ryan hesitated. He didn't want to make promises he couldn't keep. But he looked into those frightened eyes. "I promise." Isabella looked up at him. "Do you always keep your promises?" The question hit Ryan hard, because he knew that sometimes even when you do your best, things don't turn out the way you promise. "I try, with all my strength." Isabella nodded and went back to staring at the floor. That afternoon, after the building was empty, Ryan, Sarah, and the employees sat in a circle. "I need you all to know something," Ryan said. "I'm going to fight with everything I have. I'll hire the best lawyers. I'll spend whatever it takes, but I can't promise we'll win." "And if we lose?" Rita asked. "If we lose, we'll find another way. We'll open somewhere else. We'll change our strategy, but we will not give up." Sarah looked at him. "Why do you do this? Why don't you just go back to your quiet life?" Ryan took a deep breath. "Because there's no such thing as a quiet life when you know children are suffering and you can do something about it. Because money without purpose is just paper. And because you all taught me that family isn't about blood. It's about choosing to stay, even when it gets hard." Silence. Some were crying, others just looked at Ryan. "Then we stay." Monica said, "We stay and we fight." "We stay," Amanda repeated. "We stay," they all said one by one. And in that empty dining hall, with an uncertain future and the weight of the world on their shoulders, they made a silent pact, a pact of resistance, a pact of love. Because sometimes the only thing left when everything seems lost is the choice not to give up on the people you love, even when the whole world tells you that you should. The morning arrived heavy. Ryan woke with a start, his heart racing, covered in a cold sweat. He had dreamed the project was on fire, with Isabella trapped inside, screaming for help. It was 5:40 a.m. He got up, dressed hastily, and left without breakfast. For the past 3 months, since the scandal had hit the media, he felt like he was walking on broken glass. Every day brought a new threat. When he arrived at the Roots project at 6:30, he found Sarah already there. She was sitting alone at one of the kitchen tables, holding a cup of cold coffee. Her eyes were red and swollen. "Sarah, what's wrong?" She looked up, and what Ryan saw, in her eyes made him freeze. It was pure despair. "I got a letter this morning. It was slipped under my door during the night. They know where I live. They know what time Isabella leaves the house." Ryan felt his blood run cold. Sarah held out the paper with a trembling hand. He took it and read, 3 typewritten lines. "If you don't drop the lawsuit and close the project in 48 hours, the girl will pay the price. Accidents happen to children every day." Rage rose like lava. Ryan crumpled the paper, his knuckles turning white. "We're going to the police now." "No!" Sarah shot up, knocking over the cup, which shattered on the floor. "The letter says if we involve the authorities, they'll consider it a breach of the agreement." "What agreement? They're threatening your daughter." "I know." The scream was loaded with desperation. "I spent the whole night sitting by her bed with a kitchen knife in my hand." Sarah broke down, hiding her face in her hands. They were deep, racking sobs, the sound of someone breaking. Ryan knelt beside her. "Look at me. I'm not going to let anything happen to Isabella." "You can't. Promise that." "I'll hire security. I'll have people watching your house 24 hours a day. I'll put someone at the school. She won't be left alone." "And the project?" Ryan looked around. He saw the giant pots, the pictures of smiling children on the walls. "We're not closing. We're not going to let these people destroy the lives of 80 children." "But what about Isabella?" "She will be protected. I guarantee it." Sarah looked at him for a long moment. "Okay, I trust you." That morning, Ryan hired private security, installed cameras at Sarah's house, and placed 2 undercover guards at the school. But in the afternoon, his phone rang. It was the principal, her voice tense. "Mr. Carter, I need you to come here. Something happened with Isabella." Ryan's heart stopped. "Is she okay?" "Physically, yes, but someone put something in her backpack. Something disturbing." Ryan was there in 15 minutes. He ran to the principal's office and found Isabella sitting there, pale, clinging to Sarah. On the desk, inside a plastic bag, was a mutilated doll. Its arms were torn off. Its legs were broken. Its face was scribbled on with a red marker. Pinned to its chest was a note. "This is the last warning." Ryan felt something break inside him. He had underestimated the enemy. He had put a child in danger. Isabella looked up. It was pure fear. "Mr. Ryan, I'm scared." In that moment, Ryan made the hardest decision of his life. "Sarah, take Isabella and go to my house now. Stay there until I fix this. What are you going to do?" He knelt in front of Isabella. "Do you trust Mr. Ryan?" Isabella nodded, her eyes full of tears. "Then be brave. Go with your mom. Stay at my house. And I promise that when you wake up tomorrow, all of this will be over." "You promise?" Ryan kissed her forehead. He watched Sarah and Isabella leave. He turned to the principal. "I need the security camera footage." He spent hours analyzing the recordings. At 4 in the afternoon he saw it. A man in a baseball cap and sunglasses, looking like a delivery guy, walking in with a box. But something about the way he walked was off. He froze the image and zoomed in. He recognized him. It was one of the former employees from the shelter. One of the men who worked with the director he'd exposed. He picked up his phone. "I need information. Everything on the men who worked at that shelter. Where they are. Who they talked to. I want it in 6 hours." At 8 that night, the private investigator called. "Mr. Carter, I have the information. You're going to want to hear this in person." "Where are you?" "In the parking garage of your building." Ryan went down. He found the investigator with a folder full of documents and photos. The director wasn't alone. He has connections with 3 city aldermen and 2 businessmen who supply the shelters. The scheme was much bigger. It involves at least 8 institutions. Ryan picked up a photo. It showed the director at an expensive restaurant, having dinner with men in suits. "If you expose this, you'll take down half the city administration. They know it. That's why they're desperate to shut you up." "They're not going to shut me up." "They'll try to stop you. They'll offer you money." "I'm not interested." "Then they'll try to destroy you." Ryan looked at the evidence of a scheme that had ruined the lives of hundreds of children. He thought, Of Isabella trembling. He thought of Sarah crying. He thought of all the children who had suffered. Let them try. I'm going to expose everything, and I'm going to make sure every single one of them pays. This could be dangerous. I know, but some things are worth the risk. When he got home, it was almost midnight. He found Sarah and Isabella asleep in the guest room, holding each other. The girl's face was stained with dried tears. Ryan stood in the doorway watching. He had started all of this on an impulse because of an inexplicable connection to a girl eating in the rain. And now he was about to enter a war that could cost him everything. But looking at that sleeping child, seeing the innocence that still endured, he knew there was no choice. He closed the door and went to his office. He turned on his computer and started organizing all the documents. He created a digital folder with everything. He named each file with dates and clear descriptions. He separated the evidence by category. At 3 in the morning, he sent copies of everything to 3 different investigative journalists. If something happened to him, the information would already be out there beyond the reach of his enemies. He also sent copies to his lawyer with clear instructions. If he didn't make contact in 48 hours, everything was to be handed over to the district attorney's office immediately. When he finished, it was 4 in the morning. He saved everything, shut down the computer, and leaned back in his chair, exhausted. He closed his eyes for a moment and saw the mutilated doll again. He saw the note. And then the house phone rang. It was an unknown number. Ryan answered. On the other end, an electronically distorted voice said just 6 words, "You still have time to back down," and hung up. Ryan stood there holding the phone, looking at the documents. He looked down the hall toward the room where Isabella was sleeping. That voice still echoed. The threat was clear. Stop now or face the consequences. He thought of everything he had built. 3 companies, a fortune in investments, a solid reputation, a lifetime of hard work. It could all come crashing down in the next few hours. But then he remembered Isabella's face. That first time eating in the rain, humiliated and alone. He remembered her eyes today, full of fear, pleading for help. He remembered every child who came through the project. He picked up his cell phone and called his head of security. "Double the surveillance on the house, now, and I want someone inside the room where Sarah and the girl are sleeping." "Sir, has something happened?" "Just do it." He hung up. His hands were shaking slightly. He wasn't going to back down. He couldn't. He had come too far. He knew too much. And he couldn't look Isabella in the eye knowing that he had given up. He stood up and went to the guest room. The door was ajar. Through the crack he could see the security guard sitting in a chair in the corner, alert. He could see Sarah and Isabella sleeping, wrapped in each other's arms. The girl stirred in her sleep, murmured something, and Sarah tightened her embrace even while asleep, an instinctive gesture of protection. Ryan felt his chest tighten. This woman had trusted him. She had put her own daughter's life in his hands, and he had promised to protect her. He closed his eyes and made a silent vow. He was going to end this, no matter the cost. He went back to his office and sat down at the computer again. He opened the folders with all the evidence. He looked at the names on the documents: aldermen, businessmen, administrators, an entire network of corruption built on the suffering of defenseless children. He clicked send on the last emails he had prepared. It was irreversible now. The evidence was in the hands of journalists, lawyers, people who would get the information out. His enemies could no longer stop what was coming. He looked out the window. The sky was beginning to lighten. Soon it would be morning. Soon Isabella would wake up. Soon he would have to look her in the eye and assure her that everything would be okay. Ryan took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his responsibility. He had made his choice. He had crossed the line. Now all that was left was to wait and see if it had been enough to protect the little girl who had changed his life forever. But for the first time in this whole battle, Ryan felt truly afraid. Not for his money, his reputation, or his businesses. He was afraid that in the end he wouldn't be able to protect the girl he had promised to keep safe. The sun had barely risen when Ryan's doorbell rang. It was 6 in the morning. He opened the door to find 2 of the journalists he had contacted overnight. Behind them was a news van from one of the city's major networks. "Mr. Carter, we received the material. It's explosive. We want to run a special report today, but we need your official statement. Ryan glanced back at the silent hallway where Sarah and Isabella were still sleeping. He thought about backing down, asking for more time, but he knew there was no more time. This was it. Let's do it. For the next 2 hours, Ryan gave a detailed interview, showing documents, explaining the embezzlement scheme he had uncovered, presenting proof of the director's connections to aldermen and businessmen. He spoke of the threats, of the mutilated doll in Isabella's backpack, of the terror a 7-year-old girl was living through. When he finished, the older journalist looked at him with a serious expression. "Mr. Carter, you understand this will trigger an investigation into the city's entire shelter network, right? This is going to upset some very powerful people." "I know, and that's exactly why I'm doing it." The story aired at 8 in the morning, and the chaos began instantly. Within 15 minutes, Ryan's phone was ringing off the hook. Lawyers, journalists, worried investors, friends wanting to know if he had lost his mind, and threats, lots of threats. But then, at 9 o'clock, a different kind of call came. It was from the district attorney's office. "Mr. Carter, we just saw the report. We need you to come down here now with all the original evidence. We are opening an immediate investigation." Ryan looked at Sarah, who had woken up and was standing beside him, holding Isabella and listening to everything. "I'll bring the evidence, but I need guarantees. I need protection for Sarah and her daughter. I need you to arrest the men responsible now before they disappear or try anything else. We already have a team on the way to their residences." Ryan hung up and looked at Sarah. She had tears in her eyes, but for the first time in days they weren't tears of despair, they were tears of relief. "Is it over?" she asked, her voice trembling. "It's ending." Isabella lifted her head from her mother's shoulder. "Mr. Ryan, I don't have to be scared anymore." He knelt in front of her and held her small hands. "No, Princess, you don't have to be scared anymore." In the hours that followed, everything happened very quickly. The corrupt director was arrested at his home, trying to board a flight out of the country. 2 of the aldermen involved resigned before they could be formally charged. The businessmen had their city contracts suspended. The scheme that had operated in secret for years was being exposed on every news channel, in every newspaper, on every news site. Ryan spent the entire day at the DA's office, handing over documents, giving his testimony, answering questions. When he finally got home, it was almost 10 at night. He was exhausted, but something inside him felt lighter. He found Sarah and Isabella in the living room, watching the news. The girl was in her pajamas, hugging a teddy bear Ryan had bought for her weeks ago. "Look, Mr. Ryan," Isabella pointed to the television. "You're on TV." Ryan smiled tiredly. He sat on the sofa next to them and, for the first time in days, allowed himself to relax. It was a tough day. "It was a victorious day," Sarah corrected, looking at him with gratitude. "You saved those children. You saved my daughter." Ryan looked at Isabella, who had turned her attention back to the teddy bear, making it dance. "She saved me first." The following days were a whirlwind. More arrests, more resignations, more revelations. The scandal grew to proportions Ryan had never imagined. They discovered the scheme involved not 8, but 17 different institutions. Children who were supposed to be protected were being used as a source of profit by unscrupulous people. But in the midst of the chaos, something beautiful began to happen. The Roots Project, which Ryan had started almost by chance, became a symbol of resistance and hope. Donations started pouring in from everywhere. Volunteers showed up wanting to help. Other mothers, just like Sarah, sought out the project, wanting to work, wanting to make a difference. A month after the scandal broke, Ryan was at the project helping pack lunches when Sarah approached him. "There's someone here who wants to talk to you." He turned and saw Isabella standing in the kitchen doorway, holding something in her hands. It was a drawing. "Mr. Ryan, I made this for you." Ryan wiped his hands and took the drawing. It was a family. A tall man, a woman with black hair, and a little girl. They were all smiling, and above them was a giant yellow sun. "It's us," Isabella explained proudly. "You, my mom, and me. And do you know what it says? Ryan looked at the crooked letters at the bottom of the drawing. My family. He felt his throat tighten. He looked at Sarah, who had tears in her eyes. Isabella has been asking for weeks if you were going to be her dad, Sarah said quietly. I told her you were part of her family, in the way you could be. Ryan knelt in front of Isabella, holding the drawing carefully. You know, I'm not your real dad, right? I know, Isabella answered seriously, but you take care of us, you protected us, and you're always here. My teacher said family isn't just the people you're born with, it's the people who choose to stick with you. Ryan hugged the little girl, feeling something break inside his chest. But it was a good kind of break. It was the breaking of walls he had built for years to protect himself. It was the breaking of the loneliness he had gotten used to calling life. Then I choose, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I choose to stick with you. 3 months later, the Roots project had expanded. It now operated out of a larger building, donated by a businessman who had been moved by the story. It served 200 children every day. Sarah had become the general coordinator, earning a dignified salary for the first time in her life. 5 other women worked with her, all with similar stories of struggle and perseverance. Isabella was at a new school, one where no one judged her for her mother's job or the simple food in her lunchbox. She had made friends. She smiled often. She still had nightmares sometimes, still woke up scared thinking she saw the mutilated doll. But slowly, the peaceful nights were becoming more common than the fearful ones. And Ryan had changed. He was still a successful businessman, still had companies and investments, but now 3 times a week he was at the project, packing lunches, talking with the children, listening to stories, being part of something bigger than himself. On a Saturday afternoon, 6 months after that rainy morning when it all began, Ryan was sitting on a bench in a park near the project, watching Isabella play with other children. Sarah sat down next to him. You seem different, she commented. Different how? Lighter, happier. Ryan thought about it. It was true. The 3-story mansion that was once his house had become just a place where he slept some nights. His real home was here, at the project, with these people, with this community that had formed around a simple purpose, to protect children. I spent my whole life thinking I needed money to be happy, he said finally, thinking that if I was successful enough, rich enough, I would fill the emptiness I felt. But you know what I discovered? What? That you don't fill emptiness with money. You fill it with purpose, with connection, with family. Sarah took his hand, a simple gesture loaded with meaning. Thank you, she said, for everything, for believing, for fighting, for not giving up on us. Thank you, Ryan replied, for trusting me, for letting me be a part of this. Isabella ran up to them, her face flushed from running, her eyes shining with joy. Mr. Ryan, come play tag with us. He smiled. 6 months ago, he would have said no, that he had work, that he had important commitments. But now he knew there was no commitment more important than this one. I'm coming! He stood up, let Isabella take him by the hand, and ran with her back to the group of children. And as he ran, laughing, stumbling, being chased by 5 screaming, laughing children, Ryan Carter finally understood what it meant to be truly rich. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about power. It wasn't about status or reputation. It was about having people you love. It was about making a difference in someone's life. It was about looking back and seeing that your time in the world left something better than you found. It was about a 7-year-old girl eating in the rain and a lonely man who stopped to see her, and about how that unlikely meeting on that grey June morning had transformed 2 lives forever. Isabella shrieked with joy when she finally tagged Ryan, making him fall back onto the grass. Other children piled on, all of them laughing, and for a moment there in that simple park, surrounded by happy, noisy children, Ryan Carter was just a man. Not a millionaire, not a businessman, not a savior, just a man who had chosen to see, who had chosen to act, who had chosen to love. And sometimes That's the choice that changes everything.